Ladies and gentlemen, hello everybody, both friends and colleagues and participants. My name is Vaira Freiberger. I'm a co-chair of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, and we are very proud to announce today a very special event, a very extremely timely event and topical event, which is the presence of the President of Afghanistan, His Excellency Mohammed Ashraf Ghani, to give us a keynote address. The topic of the discussion today generally will be Afghanistan, the peace process, security situation and its impact on the broader region. And of course, the religious question remains an acute one as well. We all know that the decision by President Biden to withdraw US troops after a 20-year presence in Afghanistan is still in the news and has been confirmed. Yesterday, Wednesday, there was a meeting of ministers of defense of members of the NATO alliance, and they all agreed on a withdrawal of troops by September, together with the Americans in a progressive way. My country, Latvia, has been part, as many NATO members, of the operation called Resolute Support, which was involved in large measure with the presence of advisors and instructors and support for the forces of the government of Afghanistan to be able to take over control of their territory. Meanwhile, as those of you who have looked at the latest news have seen that BBC reporters, in talking to representatives of the Taliban, hear somewhat evasive answers on their part as to what their future plans are. We know that the US withdrawal was conditional on an agreement with the Taliban for them to peacefully participate in the reconstruction and the development of Afghanistan as a modern country. Nevertheless, we heard no later than this afternoon pronouncements of some representatives of the Taliban saying that they are engaged in a jihad, that their aim is nothing less but totalitarian theocracy, even if they do not use those words, because they're talking jihad, and that is a way of worship for them. So that it is all the more important, I think, for the friends, allies, and supporters of Afghanistan to have this opportunity to hear a keynote address from the president himself. But I pass, first of all, the floor to my co-chair, Dr. Ismail Serageldin, who, apart from being a founding member of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, spent many years with the World Bank, and he will continue to give his introduction of our honored speaker, our keynote speaker for today. Ismail, are you ready to take over?
Today we are going to have really lots of speakers. Yeah, Dr. Ismail, please, can you unmute yourself? That's follow. Dr. Ismail.
Thank you very much, Robshan. Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam President. It is a rare privilege for me to be able to introduce His Excellency Ashraf Ghani, President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. He is a man of passion and compassion that I had the privilege to work with many years at the World Bank. I was then Vice President of the World Bank, and we embarked together on a new initiative that the World Bank had never broached before. The bank, which was created in 1944, was geared to handling reconstruction or development loans only in cases where stable governments were in place, such as the victors or the vanquished of the World War II. Other assistance was deemed humanitarian and outside of the bank's domain. But Ghani and a few others and myself, recognizing that many of the conflicts that had appeared towards the end of the last century were long duration conflicts. President Ghani and I and a few colleagues wanted the bank to play a role in assisting countries that had such internal conflicts to move towards peace and achieve active promotion of development projects. We call this post-conflict reconstruction, and it soon became an accepted form of World Bank assistance to some of the poorest and most war-torn countries in the world. Then we went our separate ways, and I went to Egypt to launch the Library of Alexandria. And little did I know that my colleague, Ashraf Ghani, would put his own mettle to the test in his own country and at the highest level. But having worked with him closely in a number of cases, I admire his courage, I respect his integrity, and have the highest esteem for his political acumen. And I have the fullest confidence in his judgment, his insight in understanding complex situations, and in his determination to pursue the course that he deems right and that he deems best. So today is a very special day where we have the chance to listen to His Excellency President Ashraf Ghani speak at a crucial moment in the history of Afghanistan and of the region. His Excellency President Ashraf Ghani.
President Freiberger, Dr. Sirajuddin. Dr. Sirajuddin forgets to mention that he's my mentor. I've learned an immense amount from him, and it's always a pleasure to see you again. You left a mark on everything you touched in the bank, and whichever human being you've touched bears the marks of kindness. Thank you for that introduction. Nizami Ganjavi was among the 10 top founders or founders of discourse in the Dari Persian language, whose influence is cascaded through the last 8 centuries. As he wrote, Nizami's calling is crafting of Dari poetry. Suitable for him is rhyming Dari into poetry. This was the lingua franca of the region. And among others, he influenced Italian opera in the 18th century, so his impact is wide. Let me pay tribute to the Nizami Ganjavi Center, which has turned Baku under the co-chairs into a central node of dialogue and international exchange among civilizations. I think Ismail, as usual, has had a knack for choosing the right date. When he chose the 15th, I didn't know I will be speaking to a drama that would fit Nizami Ganjavi's description of his very rich dramas. President Biden's decision on withdrawal of US forces and the decision of NATO to do the same sets a change in context for a reset of assumptions, alignments, and actions. I've had constructive conversation with President Biden and Secretary General of NATO, Stoltenberg, last night in a very productive hour-and-a-half meeting today with Secretary Blinken, who visited us in Kabul. I respect President Biden's decision and have spent the last 24 hours to help frame the next chapter of our relationship with the United States, NATO, non-NATO allies, including Azerbaijan, that is had close to 1,000 troops in Afghanistan, and also our developmental partners. The fundamental issue for us is when context changes, we change accordingly. So I'm not going to discuss the past. I'm going to focus on the present and future. If you had questions on the past, we could return to those. What are some of the implications of the decision that President Biden has made? It's a game-changing decision as it forces all actors and stakeholders in the region, in Eurasia, in the Islamic world, and globally to rethink their assumptions. The first consequence is that it removes the major element of turbulence and uncertainty that has prevailed in the last 2 years. Will the US withdraw or will it stay? The amount of time that this decision took was truly a source of turbulence because everybody was operating with a different set of assumptions, and that was not productive. Now that ambiguity is removed, we have clarity. 2, it puts an end to the narrative of US-NATO as part of a larger regional competition and Afghanistan as a site of that competition with other big powers. Also, I hope that it puts an end to conspiracy theories, because there's been no shortage of those as to why the United States is here, what's the scale, what's the presence, what's the future. There is positively the possibility of a new narrative. For us, it's a narrative of responsibility, sacrifice, partnership in nation building, peace building, market building, in regional connectivity, in security. The region will have to now rethink fundamentally its parameters of security and its partnership with Afghanistan. On the other side, there is the possibility, as President Freiberger mentioned in her introduction, of narratives of jihadists, conquest, and in the triumph of transnational terrorist networks and transnational criminal networks. We're going to be competing on 2 narratives, and I hope that one set that we advocate with. The other implication is that the UN is going to be given a renewed importance in its functions of peacemaking in regional consensus building. It has been understood that the UN is precisely made for this function because there's been no substitute to be able to bring all the key stakeholders and hopefully serve as a catalyst for consensus. The risks of containing transnational terrorist networks for 20 years were borne first exclusively by the United States and NATO, and then particularly in the last 6 years by the government of Afghanistan and our international allies. Over 94% of the operations conducted in the last 2 years against these forces has been done by the Afghan government. The role of international forces after I became president at the end of 2014 has been reduced to the footprint. And as you recall, I hope their casualties last year were 0. The Eurasian region, the most dynamic region of the world, economically, in the center of the likely center of economic gravity for the 21st century, will have to re-examine its dimensions of security. As to how, the fundamental question to them is what are the advantages of a stable, democratic, sovereign, neutral, and connected Afghanistan, the end state that we've advocated and the international partners have endured, or, God forbid, in Afghanistan in chaos and a center of threats to others. The most significant part of the decision of President Biden is that the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and the Afghan people have to confront and overcome the legacies left by the last 20 years of violence and the last 42 years. We have been a scene of conflict, first generated by the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and then, of course, by the attack on the towers on 9/11. It's 42 years, and This legacy now needs to be confronted and overcome by us with association with our regional and global partners. We see the potential for a new chapter in our partnership. Secretary Blinken today has confirmed that the Strategic Partnership Agreement, the Bilateral Security Agreement, and the Status of Forces Agreement remain intact. Support for our heroic defense and security forces, as well as economic assistance and humanitarian assistance, will continue. We are going to reconfigure the mechanisms. It's a moment of choice for Taliban. Will they opt for a peace that is on the table, or will they opt for conquest? I see my old friend and partner Shaukat Aziz, and thank you, Shaukat, for being here. It's also, Mr. Prime Minister, a moment of choice for our neighbor, Pakistan. For Pakistan, it's a decision of destiny. Will it opt for regional cooperation, international partnership, in regional prosperity through joint efforts, or will it give way to the forces that have hitherto supported and sustained the Taliban and the wave of extremism for which Pakistan, next to Afghanistan, has probably paid the highest price? So it is a moment of decision. We will need to watch. Turning back to the second part, security. The first issue that I'd like to bring to your attention is that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is focused on individual rights. Fortunately, they are all embodied in our Constitution, but Afghanistan has been denied for 42 years a collective right, which is the right to peace. The Charter of the United Nations holds this promise, but the Universal Declaration of Rights is not linked the two. In our view, the right to peace is the foundational right that ensures then the delivery of individual rights, particularly of women, youth, the disadvantaged sectors, the majorities, the poor. 90% of our people live below $2 a day. That is the right, that the social rights, sets of rights in the Universal Declaration that needs to, fortunately, in the last 6 years, 58% of the administration now is below 40 years of age, including most of our security sector, below the rank of Brigadier General. And 30% of the administration is now women. Afghan women speak for themselves and articulate for themselves, and I'm extraordinarily proud of this. Peace, hence, peacemaking, peace building, and sustaining peace. I've captured our vision of peace in a diagram, which is a bridge. Our current condition is one of restricted warfare. The bridge is 3 parts. The destination is a just and lasting peace. The parts are to make peace through a political settlement, to build peace through a government of peace under the current constitution for a short duration, culminating in an election. The first phase will need to end in a public assembly. We have a remarkable institution called the Loy Jirga, or the Grand Assembly, where all walks of life gather together. After the election, there will need to be a political compact. We have articulated this vision fully, it's socialized, and I've made very clear, if I have 4 years of my term left, but for the sake of peace, my colleagues and I are willing to hold elections from 6 months to a year maximum, so that the will of the people, the key to us is the right of the people to choose their leader, and for me to hand over legitimate authority to my successor. Let me turn to the classic notion of security, because that is uppermost probably on your minds. We are not at risk of collapse. The narratives of the Afghan government falling apart is a false narrative. Our commandos, special forces and air force alone are 40,000 strong. They've trained among the best. They are among the best in the region. As long as this force stays, there is no risk of state collapse. I've spent a lot of time with them, and I'm proud as the function of Commander-in-Chief. Most of the operations have been carried by them. Now, they've all been brought into one command called the ANASOC, or the Afghanistan National Authority for Special Operations. Every day, they carry 30 to 40 operations with precision and with determination. The force is led by a new generation of men and some women. Women are beginning to make a major mark in the police and slowly in the army, including we have pilots and other parts where the women are participating. The key issue is not the cohesion or the loyalty of the force. There's not been a single occasion where they've disobeyed their civilian leaders. And one of the distinguished characteristics of Afghan history is that since 1747, our last incarnation as a continuous state, only 2 generals have led this country. And even during the communist period, the party took over authority from the officers. President, vice presidents, national security advisor, minister of defense, minister of interior, director of national security, are all civilians. And this is a key. We have a layered security of 350,000 forces from core commands in different parts of the country. In addition to this, people are armed and ready to defend their villages and their districts. The challenge is twofold. One, manageable enablers in technology, because it's access to the right form of technology. Fortunately, this year, our key civilian effort is digitalization of the economy, the society, and the government. And we have now the human capital. We're about 400 people with masters and PhDs, 110 of them, 120 of them alone from the Berlin Technical University. The other challenge is the nature of the war. Distinguished colleagues, war has become totally unrestricted. There are no rules to this war. Never since the Mongol invasion have our women been so exposed, our civil society leaders targeted, our ulama assassinated, etc. So it's that, it's not the level of face-to-face confrontation. The Taliban, including in Kandahar, they attempted conquest of one district, lost one, left behind 1,000 dead, but mined the place to hell. Today I was talking to the thing, they've mined every single place, every single canal, etc. It's a horror story. It's this unrestricted war that needs to end. The other component is a multi-dimensional view of security. What do I mean by that? First, the citizen perspective. From the view of the Afghan citizen, the range of what they expect from state vis-a-vis security is not restricted to physical security. COVID-19 was one example, and we managed it, thank God, very well, 2 waves, and I hope that we won't have the 3rd wave. We have the lowest casualties and have been dealing. For the first time, we distributed food packages to 90% of the population to support them. But it also includes to access to education and others. Human security now has a wide definition from the perspective of the citizen. The second category in the multidimensionality is the society's needs for security. Being relatively good is not enough for them. So the right to movement is fundamental. And the right to movement is challenged because of the attacks on taxis, on buses, on tankers and others. There's a systematic series of attacks by the Taliban that cannot be preempted because they're random. But society, and then within the society, each category, and we have at least 28 social categories in our country, has specific articulation of needs. Here, the major issue for the region, and particularly for Europe, is exit. Afghan society is networked. We have a diaspora over 1 million people. 1 million people in Afghanistan can easily pack and move. They have voice, the voice, if it's not responded in the classic Hirschman. So the possibility of immigration from this poses a regional dimension of security. The other dimension of security is the needs of the market. Market is an ecosystem. The market cannot be summed up into the private sector. I've articulated this in a 10-dimensional frame to see the key components of the market. And the needs of the market, our society completely depends on supply chains and value chains managed by the private sector. The state is an asset, but they provide food security. Every district in Afghanistan, nearly 400 districts, is supplied by the market. And COVID again showed how effective this was and level of. The third thing is security from the perspective of networks. We have virtuous networks, civil society networks, the networks of ulama, the networks of women. Afghanistan is forming social capital as there is no tomorrow. There's just been a flourishing of social network. And these networks are regional. Every day, 100,000 people probably cross to Pakistan, 50 or 30,000 people cross to Iran, and there's a flow. We are a hub, a regional hub of flows that has existed for hundreds. The other part is the malign networks, because they are the most sophisticated. The drug network is probably one of the most sophisticated networks in terms of global integration, credit, and others. Related to this is because we are embarking, if Afghanistan is to deliver its potential, it needs mega projects of connectivity. The Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline is one example. The railway from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan through Afghanistan to Pakistan as another. Kasa 1000, the power transmission from Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan will join this to Pakistan is another, and these are just the beginning. Mega projects require a different focus because just political guarantees are not enough. And then there's the major dimension, relationship between states in terms of assumptions of security. Afghanistan was seen till 6 years ago by Central Asia to be a source of poison. Today, it's seen as a source of benefit, and Afghanistan is considered the 6th Central Asian member country. Regional perspective, again, plays to this, and here is the risk. One of the categories of risk that will need to be re-examined fresh is what would be the risk of transnational terrorist networks and transnational criminal networks, particularly to Eurasia, and heroin from Afghanistan has now made it to Canada. It's past Australia and others. It's only the Mexican cartel that's preventing it from getting to the United States. So those networks allow. Let me come back to the advantages so we have time for questions. What are some of our key assets, just in terms of location? Afghanistan is the shortest route between Central Asia, West Asia, and South Asia. Historically, Toynbee, the great British historian, coined a term called the roundabout. In contrast to a cul-de-sac, a roundabout is a place where ideas, people, and goods flow. For 2,500 years, if not 5,000 years, ideas, people, and goods have flown through us. We are also known as the Gate of South Asia or Gate of India, a crossroad, a land bridge. This spatial location turned into isolation only at the end of 19th century, giving rise to a buffer state. Today, for the next 300 years, our location is absolutely critical because the first industrial revolution, railways, the second industrial revolution, electricity and steam engine, the third, computers, and the fourth, digitalization, all. Two, we are the upper riparian for most of our neighbors. We provide the water. And now we are harnessing our water. In the next 3 years, Afghanistan has the potential of putting 1.3 million hectares of new land under cultivation and increasing this. It could again become a bloodbath. Three, it's a remarkable source of renewable energy. Solar in gigawatts, not in megawatts. Wind, 70,000 megawatts potential. Hydro, minimally 25,000. Geothermal, about 8 to 10,000. And as I said, solar is increasing by the day. The other is just our lithium is estimated to be $1 trillion. The Russians called us the Mendeleev table. For the rare earth, 12 out of the 14 elements of rare earth exist in Afghanistan. And it's some of the richest unexplored iron mines, copper mines, and others in the world. We're fortunate that we have signed a memorandum of understanding with Fortescue, one of the leading producers of energy in green industry. We are in the process of finalizing the studies. If the studies pan out, there will be 20,000 megawatts of power from hydro, resulting in some of the greenest industry on earth. It could give us a type of jump that Singapore acquired from its banking location and others. Let me conclude. Afghanistan can be a stable Afghanistan, could be source of immense benefit, particularly to Pakistan, where the rate of growth could be enhanced by as much as 2%, to Central Asia, to Iran, and others. Here, President Biden's decision is a moment that allows for thinking through. The good news is that almost all regional countries now believe that the future lies in regional cooperation and the cooperative advantage. The other side is the risk of intense war, which could have unforetold consequences. Our focus on reaching a political agreement and on making use of this moment is to avoid those scenarios. But God forbid, should those come, we are ready to fight to death because it would not be a question of choice, but a question of commitment. And for me, the embodiment of constitutional duty. Thank you very much again for this opportunity. All of you are very significant voices in this partnership to focus on the opportunities and to generate the consensus that is needed to move forward. 20 years of internationally based conflict in Afghanistan is going to be over Today, we've charted our way for the next 6 months. It's going to be an orderly, predictable process. Let me pay tribute to all the men and women in uniform from your countries and from all over the world who came in our hour of need, also the civilians who've helped us. Now it's time to put those energies all to construction. Thank you.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for the inspirational speech, and we are really extremely grateful for Your Excellency joining us in 2019 in the Baku Forum, Global Baku Forum with our President Aliyev, and also receiving our gold medal, Islamic International Medal by our Madam Co-Chair, by Rebecca Freiberg and Dr. Ismail Sregeldin. But if you allow us now, we have some questions from our members and friends. And first, I would like to introduce Susan Elliott. She's a president and CEO of the National Committee of American Foreign Policy. And especially, as you mentioned, with taking into consideration today's circumstances with President Joe Biden's decision, that question will be the most valuable.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for those inspirational words. I was also U.S. Ambassador to Tajikistan when you were elected president, so I very much remember the leadership that you have given your country. One of the things, and I'm also very pleased to hear you talk about the connectivity with Central Asia, because that was my area of interest when I worked for the US government. And I think hearing you discuss CASA 1000, TAPI, and other connectivity projects are extremely important. But one of the things that you've mentioned, and I think that we would probably want to know about is what are your thoughts on discussions with the Taliban before the withdrawal of troops? Are there plans to continue the dialogue, perhaps in Turkey or in another place? And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, thank you, Madam Ambassador. And I recall our visit in Tajikistan. Yes, we are committed to the dialogue. The ball is in the court of the Taliban. We are fully prepared for Istanbul. There's a consensus on this, national and within the government. We will see now whether the Taliban opt. The key is that the political committee does not represent, unfortunately, the military committee or the commanders. They've not socialized peace yet, but it's a jolt that they need to absorb, because they could not think that the United States will withdraw. For me, there is no surprise in the decision. It clarifies a lot of things and it allows us to move forward. So the right decision will have the consequences of making Taliban think seriously. If they engage in war, they would have lost a golden opportunity. And I hope that they don't do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now, if you would allow, Your Excellency, now we have Dr. Franco Frattini, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy and former High Commissioner of his European Commissioner. He has some questions, and one of the great persons who knows about the European foreign policy.
Mr. President, first of all, it's a great pleasure to listen to your speech and to very emotional words about what is the impact of the recently adopted decision from President Biden. Italy, as you know, and I had the honor to meet you as a foreign minister when you were Minister of Economy and Finance years ago. And Italy has been always supporting your country for security, for the training of Afghan forces. There was in Italy a quite interesting debate immediately after President Biden put forward his decision to put a date, to give clarity as you rightly said, to the option that has been under discussion for months and months and months about the withdrawal. The government of Italy today issued an important statement after some meetings between the foreign minister, the defense minister of Italy, with the Secretary of State of the United States. Italy will continue to support Afghanistan by converting its support in terms of military support to supporting on cooperation for development and projects to promote and protect human rights. On this point is my question. We have a concern. The concern is that after the withdrawal of the international forces, could there be the risk that those working in Afghanistan that are seen from the extremists as those that have been cooperating with the occupying or foreign forces, whatever they call us, the extremists they call us, and with the government of Afghanistan are vulnerable to bloody retaliations on the territory. This is important because this could be an important disincentive for investing on the civilian point of view in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure to see you again, though virtually. I recall our discussions of nearly 2 decades ago, very fondly.
Yes.
Please, first of all, let me express gratitude for Italy's major role, particularly in Western Afghanistan. The city of Herat is a thriving city, thanks to Italian very substantial. First of all, we welcome the decision of the Italian government to convert the military assistance to civilian assistance, because this year the risk of drought and floods is high, and Italy's role is very important. 2 observations. One, we don't need to work physically in Afghanistan. The digitalization possibilities during COVID, now I connect to all 34 provinces of Afghanistan and all the core commands of the country virtually. Our most significant urban planning for 6 of our cities was done in the city of Boston. They never stepped foot in Afghanistan. The caliber of the people to deliver is very high. The risk you've indicated is there because some members of our civil society, women leaders, judges, and others have been assassinated. But that's where we need the voice of the international community. The Taliban have been treated with kid gloves. They mined an entire district and not one series of condemnation has come on this. Now that it's not international presence, the voice of the international community needs to become much more coherent to demand things from them. And we hope also that the government of Pakistan will be able to take a principled stance, because the risks to them of a boomerang are incredibly high.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President. And now it's a great privilege to invite Jim Schneider. She's our Board of Trustees member, and she had a huge experience while working with ExxonMobil as a vice president, but now she's working as a CEO and a founding board member of the Fund to End Global Modern Slavery. Dear Jean, question is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for joining us. It's a real honor. I actually sit on the board of directors of Fortescue, which you mentioned in your opening comments, and I'm very hopeful about moving forward with those projects. So thank you. My question is actually related to the private sector, which you raised earlier. There's a great deal of international interest in developing Afghanistan's mining and mineral sector. You mentioned rare earth, you mentioned lithium, as well as your hydroelectricity capacity to build, in our case, green energy and green industry as well. What's the impact? I know this is early, but what's the impact of the security situation and these recent decisions to pull out on private sector investment and what are very strategic areas for you, and what can be your approach to mitigate risk for those investments?
Well, thank you. One of the key areas that I discussed with Secretary Blinken today is precisely risk mitigation for the private sector.
Great.
Guarantees both from what used to be formerly OPEC, but now is the development cooperation from the United States, Hermes, and including insurance from Lloyd's. I think we need to work together to develop a set of instruments that mitigates risk. Most of the risks in Afghanistan are not new. Nigeria to Brazil to other places, all of these risks. Key for the mega projects is to ensure that the risks, if risk mitigation. Political risks guarantees can be bought from the World Bank. We are in discussion with them, but we need a private sector view to ensure these. And vis-a-vis the Taliban, the issue is that these people are supporting the mega projects. The dam projects, we completed a dam, the last dam on the Helmand River, that now allows us to regulate it, deliver our treaty agreements to Iran, but regulate our water. This is 126,000 hectares of land. It's immense public support. So mobilizing the public is part of this. We've done exactly the same on in the course of TAPI. In TAP is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. The view, what is important, and thank you for sitting on the board of Fortescue, is to get the specificity. What specific risks measures are required? How much of this can be monetized into forms of insurance and guarantees so that work can go on? Public support for it is immense.
Thank you very much.
President, and with your allowance, Mr. President, I would like to ask Ms. Tsipilivni. She's our member and a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Israel to have her questions. Our screen is too big, to find Ms. Tsipilivni. Yeah, Ms. Tsipi. If you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. And yes, I'm unmuted, and I would like to express really, you gave quite an impressive and enlightening speech. And I would like to express also my hope that Israel and Afghanistan would have diplomatic relations with each other. And hopefully, maybe this is the beginning of something. I would like to ask, I'm also part of international women's leaders asking or putting a question about the role of women in the negotiations within Afghanistan in the peace talks. Also, as the former chief negotiator for peace between Israel and the Palestinians, I can ensure and reiterate the importance of participation of women in peace talks, also in Afghanistan, not only. And the second question relates to future elections. And the question is, when this is the situation, do you really believe that you can achieve free and fair elections, and what are the demands that are needed from all the participants in the elections in order to accept the rules of democracy, in order to participate in democracy, and are there any demands that you are now talking about before election in order to have free and fair elections, that the results also will get or of course, the support of the people and the international community.
Well, thank you, Minister, for two excellent questions. Women are central. The women of Afghanistan, for the first time, convened a national gathering on peace. Our ambassadors, both to the United Nations and the United States, are women. Ministers in the cabinet, some of them I have the pleasure of sitting with me here. The new generation of women are not going to go back. It just is not going to happen. The problem with the Taliban is that they've not grown in the company of women. It's the fundamental, because from the age of 5 or 7, they went to madrasas alone with men. Afghan family culture is moderating. The power of the woman is immense. I'm sitting here because of my grandmother. She was educated and she said that education is not for bargaining. If they become part of normal society, the discussion will change. So their role, there are 4 members, there are 4 women as part of the negotiating team, but the support structure of women behind them is immense. The Ministry of Women is now becoming a powerhouse, both for being a policy-making and implementation organization. And my other colleagues could speak a lot more. And they are the most active part of the citizenry today because they know what is at stake. On the future, the first issue is where you begin. We begin from the end state, a sovereign, democratic, united, neutral, and connected Afghanistan. If we get agreement on the end state, the rest follows. If we don't get agreement on the end state, then it's not going to be the democratic path. So the people are going to have to make a choice. That choice is going to be coming upon us. The best foreign commentator on Afghanistan was a man called Mount Stuart Elphinstone, who visited us in 1803 and wrote a book in 1815. He said Afghanistan can either be run as a total dictatorship or a total democracy. We've tried dictatorship. The democratic pulse is very strong. But having said that, to accept the rules of the game, there must be a political compact. The negative power of the Taliban needs to be accounted for. Because last year, Madam Minister, we lost 18.6% of our GDP to their attacks. $1 billion out of a GDP of 20 billion. So we need to understand that society must negotiate. And our structure of local councils resulting in a national council is a formidable instrument for national debate. The council is organized, it gets to be elected now. And 52 committees, when people send, moderation descends. Collective wisdom is very great. If elections are done on the basis of winner take all, it will not be stable. For us, I personally advocate the experience of Finland after World War I is a truly inspiring one. There needs to be an accommodation and for a duration, mechanisms of sharing, decision-making, so that the wounds of the last 42 years and the last 20 years can be healed. Healing is the most significant thing that this country needs. And for that, there has to be an open democratic debate for collective security. How much are you willing to agree, to think, to sharing resources, sharing authority? Key to the election is legitimacy. If we lose the right to elect the president of the republic, then you descend. You descend into chaos because the first step then it will be either a Trojan horse strategy or a Bolshevik coup strategy or others. So our goal is to look at just and sustainable peace. Just and sustainable peace requires a lot of hard work. And that means face-to-face interactions that we have not had hitherto. If the Taliban engage the full society, I think that the outcome will be different. I hope.
Thank you, Mr. President, so much for your response. We have some more questions, but I couldn't be able to go on without asking Amr Moussa, who is one of the legends of the foreign policy in our region, to respond to your question. If Amr Moussa can, Dr. Amr Moussa can respond.
Thank you very much. Let me, first of all, thank the distinguished president for his brilliant introduction into the debate about the future of Afghanistan. I still remember vividly our meeting in Davos 2 years ago with Prime Minister Shawkat Aziz. We came together to listen to your assessment of the situation. And like today, it was a brilliant assessment. Thank you very much. I have a question about the future policy of Afghanistan vis-a-vis the situation emerging in the region and how to avoid being a battlefield of a second Cold War emerging between China and the US. Also, how to avoid getting involved in or affected by the India-Pakistan feud. And in particular, in the Islamic world, between the Shia and Sunnah, and the conflict that has unfortunately emerged for no logical reason. And would Afghanistan contribute to the conciliation within the Muslim world? The last point is about a timeout. Don't you believe, Mr. President, that Afghanistan is in need of a timeout to concentrate on rebuilding the country after the destruction resulting from the civil and the games played by big powers that caused a lot of damage to Afghanistan? And in this, do you think of considering a formal declaration of neutrality to be supported by the Security Council or accepted by the Security Council of the United Nations and also the General Assembly of the United Nations, that declaration of formal neutrality? Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary General, Minister. I recall our visit very fondly. I've always admired your wit and wisdom and your articulation, so thank you. Let me begin at the end. Yes, I'm a very strong advocate now of Afghanistan's formal neutrality. Because the word neutrality is misperceived, we call it multi-alignment. We have to have the right to maximize the number of our friends and the right not to become part of the struggles of others. The question of US-China rivalry is gone because the US is not going to be in Afghanistan militarily. But China now contributes 30% of the global development. China's market, both for raw products and for finished products, is unparalleled. Now we get to China in a week through Uzbekistan. So the question is the type of Chinese investment, the type in Europe, the type in Latin America. It really depends on the host country. But it's a very significant, we have a very short but very high border with China in the Pamirs. Sunni and Shia, Afghanistan fortunately is blessed with one of the best sets of relationship between the majority Sunni community and the minority Shia community. The threat to that has come from Daesh and the entire society has taken very strong relations. And again, it's crucial for us to have long-term cooperative relationship with each of our neighbors near and far. Iran and Pakistan are the most crucial, as is Central Asia, because with Central Asia, thank God, we have no problem. Far means India, to Azerbaijan, to Turkey, to Russia. These are neighbors. We envisage 5 circles of foreign policy. First, the immediate neighbors. Second, the Islamic world. 3, Eurasia. 4th, the
Sorry, I think with the president, his video was internet was frozen. Okay.
And I hope that we will be successful in that. And formal declaration of neutrality will assure the future generations of Afghans that our focus would be on building bridges, not a site of destruction and proxy wars.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, thank you so much. And we have 6 more questions. And I know your time is very limited, especially with the current situation, what's happening in the region, and especially in Afghanistan. And I would like to ask Dr. Hikmetullah Ihsanoğlu for his question. Dr. Ihsanoğlu. Okay, then we can move to Dr. Rashid Alimov. Dr. Alimov, please.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, hello, it's me, Roshan Ihsanoğlu.
Okay, then we can go back.
Mr. President, thank you for this wonderful speech. As a former Secretary General of OIC, I feel pity that I missed cooperating with Your Excellency in my tenure as a Secretary General, but we initiated certain projects of connecting Afghanistan with Central Asian countries, particularly in transportation and railways. I hope IDB had made the necessary funds and these projects are progressing. But my questions are more related to what has been all through decades now of this jihadism and holy jihad. And that brings us into big problems with the rest of the world. We, in different various segments of the Afghan society, after 4 decades of conflict, in an environment where the protagonists on both sides are Muslim Afghans, what are the immediate steps needed to be taken by the international community in order to effectively support a dignified, viable, durable political settlement in Afghanistan? And the Afghan war was the remnants of the Cold War. What would be the impact of political settlement in Afghanistan over inter-religious and inter-civilization relations among peoples and states, particularly from the perspective of deepening Islamophobia throughout the world? Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Ms. Secretary General, and thank you for your support for those projects. The first issue in terms of Islam is we need to go back 1,000 years. We need to claim back the heritage of the golden age of the Abbasids, to which Afghanistan, then known as Khorasan, contributed so much. After all, it was an Afghan that conquered Baghdad for Mahmud and created a wave, a renaissance that was extremely important. We need, peace is going to be the most important element in moderation and tolerance. This requires for Muslims everywhere, but particularly those in positions of responsibility, to speak out. Fear of extreme elements has to give way to courage, because unfortunately the Islam that they portray is a caricature of our classic heritage and understanding and tolerance and the values that it embodies. The question of helping with peace is to become participants in ensuring regional and international consensus for a neutral Afghanistan, culminating in a declaration, formal declaration of Afghanistan's neutrality, but simultaneously for its connectivity as a hub of energy, trade, commerce, related areas. The legacy of the Cold War, we were the last colony. You know, nobody managed to colonize us in the 19th century, but when others were bearing the, in 1919, when we declared our independence from Britain, we were the only sovereign state in the entire Muslim world. And in 1922, we had our constitution that is a model of indigenous Islamic theory and practice, resulting in a constitutional government. So burying the Cold War is going to require an incredible decision on the part of Afghan society for collective amnesia. If we open our wounds, we are going to hurt each other very badly. Spain in 1975 is a really important example for us. Germany after World War II, France after World War II, Japan after World War II, or other examples. Our society, 70.6% of our society is under 30. So it wants to move forward. There is a beautiful expression by a Russian novelist called Neighbors in Time. We don't share the same experience. We've lived the same moment, but its perception and experience is radically different. So in order to bring us together, we need national programs, social programs of citizenship focused on empowerment of the women, the youth, communities, so everybody can see the benefits of a coherent national agenda that is connected to regional and to global interaction. Afghanistan, a peaceful Afghanistan would be an immense site of tourism. In the 1960s, the hippie trail went through, and thousands of youth from Europe, from the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, and others went through. Their memories, renewal of these. It's a change in image. The Afghanistan that I love and work for every minute is a beautiful place, inhabited by a marvelous people. If any other people endured 42 years of conflict, stones will break. I don't hear complaints. All I hear from people is to move forward, to engage, to build. And we celebrate. Every dam that is built becomes a national celebration. Every move that takes place. So the goodwill here to embrace it. And last illustration. In 2018, we had a ceasefire, a truly nationally arrived ceasefire. Tens of thousands of Taliban fighters came to the cities. They were embraced in conversations. Women gave them ice cream. Ice cream was such a rage because it spoke to their deprivation. But the conversation, not one person was lynched, not one was attacked, not one was abused. We need to be able to experience that joy. Work in Kabul increased by 6 hours a day. I went for the first time to an open-air cafe to watch an international soccer game. The goodwill is here. People want to celebrate our cricket team being among the 10 top and other sorts of activities. The youth to win gold medals, citizens to engage, businesses to thrive. So there is a way to bury the Cold War, and it is possible. I hope and pray that we do not descend into a new form of Cold War that would deprive all of us of the benefit of our connected world.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, thank you so much. And now, if Your Excellency, everyone will allow, I would like to ask Dr. Rashid Alimov, former Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is very close to Afghanistan, and also with the projects to give Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. I can start?
Doctor, yes, definitely.
Yeah. First of all, Mr. President, thank you very much for your emotional and very, very constructive speech. My question is, at the end of March, you were in Dushanbe and participated in the conference of Afghanistan. At present time, there is a unique chance of the reconciliation of political situation in your country. You personally play a major role in contributing to this process. What, in your opinion, must the countries of the region and the international community do so the dynamic of the peace process and negotiations remains and peace and stability returns to the brotherly Afghanistan? Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you. And thank you for hosting us in the Shanghai meetings. You're a great Secretary General, and I recall very fondly your period in office. Dushanbe was extremely important, thanks to my brother, President Rahman, and all the distinguished participants, foreign ministers, Foreign Minister of Turkey, and other foreign ministers. We had great conversations, India, Qatar, Iran. The key is that the first step by the region has happened. You recall 6 years ago, no country in Central Asia looked at Afghanistan as potential or as a positive view. Today, from Tajikistan all the way to Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, there's a positive image of Afghanistan. That's the first step. Second, there is a shared sense of security. The region, particularly Central Asia, is converging on a positive vision of security that would allow for connectivity and for the joint development of our resources, because we've realized that one by one, we cannot do it, we will be left behind. This now needs to shift into collective security arrangements. Which regional organization will take the lead, we will leave open, or a combination. But I think in the coming months, when the Shanghai Cooperation Council is meeting, again, it's an opportunity, because the spirit of Shanghai, as you practiced it and know it best, has been enormously productive in diffusing tensions that people thought were unsolvable. We need to bring all the actors together around a coherent vision that it's to their benefit. Our relations in the region are going to be based on mutual interest, mutual respect, and mutual trust. Globally, we are facing a wave of distrust. It's the third global wave of distrust. But regionally, fortunately, we are building back to trusting. State-to-state relations are critical. And the actor that we don't know is Pakistan. So if Pakistan opts to join the trust-building approach, then a significant shift can take place. It's not that they need to use force against the Taliban, but by denying them sanctuary and using their influence, that peace is the only option. I think we'll be able to make, hopefully, a breakthrough. Thank you.
Mr. President, you mentioned about relations with Azerbaijan also, like we're grateful so much because as an Islamic International Center, I'm sure that our co-chairs, Madam President Valerica Fabric and Dr. Ismail Sarageldin will underline that we have a huge impact of Nizami's legacy to Afghanistan. Also to build a huge, because most of the manuscripts, what we are having now, or what we are getting from outside, is belonging from Afghanistan. Before going to for closing, before going to our co-chairs, I would like to ask Prime Minister Jomart Oturbayev for his remarks.
Thank you, Rafshan, and thank you for arranging. This is seminar, great meeting about Central Asia, Great Central Asia. Afghanistan is definitely the part of the Central Asia, and we are really looking forward to fruitful cooperation. I'm personally very much interested in developing relationships, and 2 days ago I published an article in Project Syndicate about Central Asia to South Asia link. You already mentioned that there is in the pipeline enormously important project between railway between Mazar-e Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar with exit to Gwadar and Karachi. It looks like that this year this project will be started, number one. Second, the not less important is TAPI, gas pipeline connecting Turkmenistan with Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. And it looks like the Taliban have been in Ashgabat recently, making guarantees for the security of this gas pipeline. So we are really looking forward for the execution of these two mega projects which will bring prosperity to all countries in the region. And knowing you from 2004, when you was finance minister and visited Bishkek, we met together for numerous occasions. My question is, what do you think about future relationships between Central Asia, Afghanistan, and South Asia, when, as all good times, Kabul, Afghanistan will be the heart of Great Silk Road?
Well, thank you. And I recall our visit, and thank you. You recall when I was finance minister, we held the first conference on regional cooperation in Kyrgyzstan, in Bishkek, and I'm very grateful for your leadership on it. The future is, first of all, Afghanistan is rejoined Central Asia after 100-year forced separation, and we are going from strength to strength because it's based on mutual interest in a collective. The basis of this is that leaders of Central Asia and I share a profound common vision on connectivity. The second issue is history. Northern India, today's Pakistan and Delhi and a set of states in northern India, for centuries were connected to Central Asia. So the prize is not just Pakistan, the prize is to link Central Asia's expanding economy, not just with China, but also to India. That will assure, I think, a type of transformation. If trade between India and Pakistan were at the level of 1947, before a separation, partition, it'd be an order of $40 billion a year. So it's extraordinarily important that we see all of South Asia with all of Central Asia and arrive at the rules of the game. Either trade should be conducted on the WTO basis or on a bridging strategy till we get to WTO. And we want to be part of this. We want to have breakfast in Tashkent, lunch in Kabul, dinner in Islamabad, and next breakfast in Delhi. It's possible. We need to just be able to think through and arrive at it. And as long as I have the honor of serving the Afghan people, you will see. And we are a network people. You know, our traders are everywhere. They've been for centuries linking people. 25 centuries ago, we invented the check as a means of payment, the Hawala system. We move these networks of virtue, also the networks of trade. The ulama are part of this, and they've been great scholars in this region. In those parts of dialogues, in the human capital level, we need to form relationship. The next generation of leaders must really have knowledge of the region and understand the wider set of opportunities there that are here. And on that basis, I think then it would be sustainable.
President, thank you so much once more. I'm really so sorry, it was my mistake because there are so many people, on the screen that sometimes it's too difficult to follow up who is present or not. But before going to our co-chairs is Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Fajri, former Director General of ISESCO, also presented his questions, he wants to have his remarks. Dr. Abdulaziz.
Thank you very much. I would like to greet you all, and especially His Excellency the President, and thank him for his speech, wishing him and Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan all the best. Your Excellency, the United States, as you have mentioned previously, and it has been announced even today, will withdraw from Afghanistan this year. While the talks with the Taliban did not bring solid agreements up till now, do Your Excellency believe that the upcoming talks that will take place in Turkey between the government of Afghanistan and Taliban will bring new hope for a real peace and permanent stability in Afghanistan? Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the good wishes, and thank you for your excellent question. We are ready. The ball is in the Taliban's court. If they absorbed the full impact of President Biden's decision, we have. You see me directed towards the future, having fully integrated this, and you don't see me either panicking or complaining. What's the status of Taliban? And what's the decision making in Pakistan? Those two are critical, and I'm hopeful that wisdom will prevail. I have my brother Shaukat Aziz and people of very good will who could have a positive impact in this, but because it's a group that lives in secrecy, we cannot predict. We can hope, prepare, and engage, but we cannot predict as to what their actions within the next 48 hours to the next week will be. But the impact of the decision may require them some time to fully absorb and understand that now an enormous responsibility is put on their shoulder as to whether they continue to opt for violence when the context is changed and their narrative has no relevance, because all the ulama, distinguished ulama of the Muslim world, have condemned their violence. There's no religious basis for their fight. This is a political issue, and political differences must be resolved politically through a settlement. Let me also thank Azerbaijan for your remarks and for the friendship of President Aliyev, and congratulate him. I told him in one of our discussion, his late father would be very proud of him for his recent accomplishment.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President. That was a discussion which our co-chair, Dr. Ismail, had with our President Aliyev recently. But I would be more than honored to give a floor to Madam President Vaidevika Freiberg and Dr. Ismail Sregeldin, our co-chairs, and they are leading the session. To close or to give anyone whomever may have any questions additionally. Madam President.
Mr. President.
Rushan, can I say a few words before? Rushan, can I say a few words before?
Hikmet wishes to speak. Let's give the floor to Hikmet if possible, if you have the time.
Yes, Minister.
Well, Mr. President, it is an honor to see you again, even from the far distance. I had an excellent time with you when I was in Afghanistan for 3 years. Your private house, we had discussed many times the future of Afghanistan. And
sorry, Minister?
He's muted.
Yeah, there's just
unmute. Mr. Setin, unmute.
I'm trying to unmute.
Hikmet, open your micro, right?
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
Now it's okay.
But I cannot see the president now.
No,
go ahead. Do speak. Do speak, Mr. Chatin.
Yeah, of course. The critical issue that we mentioned before is going to be discussed in Istanbul conference. But now the problem is whether the Taliban will accept the new calendar, which mentioned by Joe Biden and also supported by NATO. I think that the US should play a role on this because the problem coming from the US Taliban agreement on 29th of February 9, 2020. Because according to the agreement, the 1st of May was the total withdrawal of foreign forces. The one issue that I want to mention, since the president is here, I think the women of Afghanistan will not pay the price for the peace. Because when I was there, many times they were discussing with me that Afghan people, Afghan women, don't want to pay cost for the peace. And the second issue that I want to mention, of course, the role of neighboring countries. I think neighboring countries should understand that they need stable and peace in Afghanistan. This is so important. And one other issue that I want to mention, of course, the economic support of international community. Because without the economic support of international community, the peace cannot last forever. Because Afghanistan is one of the poorest countries in the world, and they need so many years to come, the very important economic support mainly from US and European Union and other international community for the future. It was wonderful to hear President Ashraf Ghani, who I knew him last 10, 20 years. I wish it was excellent speech, and I thank him again for my personally. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Minister Chatin. Thank you for your friendship, for long service, the 2 years you spent in Afghanistan. You have friends everywhere. We agree with you. Those are the critical issues, and we hope to move forward. And I'd like to thank President Erdogan and Foreign Minister Cavusoglu for their enormously creative role. Turkey was asked to host, and it's really changed it and mobilized its full diplomatic powers and its capabilities to get an excellent conference. And I hope that the Taliban will participate. What the UN told me, they treat Turkey with enormous respect. So I hope that the invitation that is gone will receive serious attention. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, thank you so much for additional questions that you accepted. Now, if I may have Madam President Vaidevica Freiberg and Dr. Ismail Sregeldin as our co-chairs to conclude and to have their remarks. And once more, thank you, Mr. President, for all your efforts and for your support to the NGIC.
Mr. President, we're extremely grateful for your graciousness in giving so much time, both to your keynote address and to the extensive questions from so many friends, collaborators, and contacts from your long years of public service for your country in various capacities. We have been inspired by your keynote address because in this very historical year for Afghanistan, when a 20-year-old presence of foreign troops on your land is going to shift over to an internal political process that hopefully is going to be a peaceful one, and one where there'll be a minimum of goodwill on the side of the Taliban, as well as all the other sectors of society and the government in place. Your speech has inspired us, your listeners. I am sure that your vision, which has been very clearly outlined, your understanding of where your country is currently, without any illusions about the difficulties that it faces, but with a very clear analysis, diagnosis of what ails it and what needs to be cured. I hope that it will be as inspiring to your fellow citizens, to the participants in the great social consultation that your country plans to undertake. And as you have seen from the participants in this meeting and the questions they have asked you, your country, Afghanistan, your long-suffering population have a great many friends, both in your immediate neighbors, in your not so close neighbors, and even in countries from very far away. We wish you every success in your endeavors. We wish you strength to continue on your path, and we wish for your fellow citizens to continue engaging in the future and to forget about a difficult past. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join President Vara in her thanks to you. You have been really quite an inspiration to hear you speak of the role of women in Afghanistan, the transformations that are already taking place, but above all, the vision that you have brought directed to the possibilities of peace and transformation in Afghanistan and the region. I am confident that we could not think of a better person to take forward a difficult situation and learn from the past, embrace the present, and invent the future. I am very optimistic after this session, and I thank you profoundly on behalf of all our colleagues, and wish you continued movement from success to success. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, President Freiberger and Dr. Saraguddin. It was a privilege to be able to hear the questions, because the questions provide half the answers in them. And to see you again and to see the President Freiberger, and let me again say how fortunate we are that you two are leading the Nizami Ganjavi Center from strength to strength. And this is one illustration of allowing us to have a conversation that is truly enriching. For me, it's been very enriching. I'm delighted with this opportunity. Let me say, one of our key characteristics as Afghans is our capacity to climb mountains, no matter how far they are, how high they are. And we have a proverb that says, a mountain will never reach another mountain, but a person will always reach another person. I hope that with that culture, we will be the site of peace, instability, and prosperity. And one day to invite you all to this land that is long suffered, but longs for a smile in engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we also are grateful for your recognition of the great poet Nizami Ganjavi, whom you mentioned in your introduction. As you know, it is his 880th birthday this year. It has been declared by President Ilham Aliyev as the year of Nizami Ganjavi. And I think that we are particularly favored in having you as part of this celebration of the great sage, because I think that in future centuries, I hope that your name will be linked to that of the great Muslim sages of their time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Mr. President, and our co-chairs, Madam President Valeria President Ismail Saragildin, and all our members who joined the discussion, which we had over 45 members from 26 countries. And we're so grateful, Mr. President, for you sharing your time in these special times with us and with all of our members that they joined us. And we hope to see you very soon. Next month with our meeting with the Prime Minister of the Belgium. That's the start of our discussion with the world leaders. And thank you so much once more, and we hope to be in touch. Thank you, Your Excellencies, once more.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.